Hello, I'm Brian Costello, and welcome to the Teacher's Journey podcast, where we talk with some of the best educators around about learning and life as they share the stories that made them the educators they are today. Welcome, everyone, to this special edition of the Teacher's Journey podcast, and it is my great pleasure tonight to be joined by the one and only Dene Gainey. I'm pronouncing that right. I should have asked you before we started. It's foolish of me. I'm not editing that out, by the way, because I want everybody to see how everybody, we all make these mistakes. So I've never actually pronounced your last name out loud. And as many times as we've spoken, I've never actually had to do that. So anyway, moving on. So I'm so excited to have Dene with me. Dene's a 4th and 5th grade teacher. He teaches a mixed grade level class down in Florida, which before we even say anything else, I just have to give you a lot of props for that, because that is a really hard thing to do, is to teach a mixed grade level, because of there's already such a span within a grade level. You see a lot of spans of abilities and things that kids are coming in knowing and not knowing. So really challenging, and that's got to be an interesting thing to do every single day. But I'm really, really happy to have Dene on, because Dene is just days away from releasing a book that I'm super excited about called The Why in You, where Dene shares stories and inspiration with all of us that I think all of us are going to benefit from. So Dene, thanks so much for joining me, and really glad you're here.
Thanks for having me, Brian. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. So before we dig into a little bit more about the book, let's talk about your why. At some point you realized, hey, I'm going to be a teacher. Like, teaching is my thing. And when was that, and what was it like?
Well, I have to be honest with you. I had such a great first grade teacher who really impressed upon me a lot to care. Not that I didn't care, but she really, really cared. And it was at that point that I knew that I would have some place in education. I didn't know exactly that I was going to be teaching at that point, but she made such an impression on me that I went back every year after I left her classroom and helped her do whatever. I mean, up until high school. And it was as if it was my job, because I felt like I was obligated to go back and sort of give back because of what she instilled in me. She didn't mess around. She was very strict, but at the same time, you knew that everything she said was because she cared. And that was where it all started for me. And when I graduated high school, my mind was set on a major in education, and that's exactly what happened. And that was in 2003, and here we are right now.
Yeah. So you got out of high school, you went to college, you were planning from the start to be a teacher. When you started teacher education, when you started working through your experiences in pre-service teaching, did you feel like that was something that actually really prepared you for the classroom, or was it kind of like not really enough?
At that time, I would have to say that I felt so excited about what was about to happen that I guess I ate up all of the knowledge and the opportunities to learn and all of that while I was in school. I was just so excited about the opportunity. If I were to answer that question now, maybe not so much. A lot has changed since I was in school. But at that time, I definitely would say that I was just so overwhelmingly excited about the opportunity to teach that I was trying to learn as much as I could about it.
So you came out, you started teaching. Were you able to get a job right out of school, or was that a challenge?
I don't know if it happens to everybody like this, but I was at my senior internship and at a really, really good school. I became really tight knit with the teachers and the administration there, and she essentially said, "If you want a job, I have one for you when you graduate." And I started working immediately at that same school, and it was such a great segue because everybody there already knew who I was.
That's got to be a great place to get started. And then, so then that first year you walk in the classroom, you're going to be like the greatest thing that's ever happened to teaching. Your door closes, the kids are all looking at you, and what happens next? I mean, that whole first year, what is it like? I mean, what happened to?
Well, I have to say it was all nerves. I did not want to make a mistake. I wanted to be that teacher. I wanted to be the teacher that everybody talked about, the one that was so much fun. Yes. The one that was so much fun and the kids went home and talked about and all of that. But I think I wrote that year out on all nerve because I was so almost afraid to do it wrong. I wanted to be perfect, I guess, for lack of a better word. And not everything went that way, but
it never does. It's funny how that happens.
I mean, all in all, I definitely say that the year turned out very well, including all the mistakes I made and the kids, even the ones the kids caught. So,
and talk about the benefit of walking into a place and teaching your first year in a school district where you knew the people, where you knew the staff, the administration, you knew some of the kids. I mean, what kind of help did that offer you in terms of dealing with the fear of inadequacy or not being good enough, which I think is common for most first-year teachers, is they're terrified. I know personally for me, I was terrified that people would find out that I didn't know, essentially that I was some sort of fraud, like that I didn't know what I was doing. And you just, like you said, you don't want to mess up. And you do because you can't help it. But so what kind of support, what kind of value was there in stepping into a place where you already knew everybody?
Well, first of all, there's nothing like being welcomed into a place by students in their own unique way. Whether that be a hug, whether that be a high five, whether that be, "Oh, I missed you. I'm so glad you're back." Whatever that is coming from a kid is so authentic and so valuable that I felt completely at ease. I was a little bit more okay if I didn't do it right because I felt like they had already grabbed an understanding of who I was as a person, my personality, and it made it a little bit easier for me to walk in on day one and say, "Okay, let's do this," or "Let's do that." And if it doesn't go exactly like I wanted to go, then I know that these kids won't hold it against me. Also, I mean, the teachers that I worked with were extremely resourceful. In fact, there was a second teacher who started the same year that I did, and she was essentially in the same boat as I was. And so we, I guess I won't use the word commiserated because we were so excited. There was nothing to commiserate about. But we sort of relied on each other. And I had a mentor teacher that was very helpful as well, almost overly, what do you need? What can I do to help you, to make you feel more comfortable? And lastly, I'll mention my administrator. I can't even begin to tell you how just refreshing, how calming, how guiding she was in the way that she approached things. It was never with a firm hand. It was with an understanding and empathetic kind of way, or she had a way of talking to you that just, if you were worried about something, it was gone after she finished talking.
That sounds like a perfect storm of positive influences within your building. Just, you have somebody who's going through the same things you are. So you have that person who you can, for lack of a better word, commiserate with, but just share your ups and downs with as you go through that first year. knowing that they're experiencing things like this for the first time. And you have supportive teachers and supportive mentor teachers, and you had a supportive administrator whose focus was on helping you grow and not, reprimanding you. So what a wonderful place to kind of start building your craft. That's really awesome. So
if I may add, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, but just as a small piece, I started as a third grade teacher, and I taught for that first year, and then I taught again third grade the second year, but then the third year, my boss moved me to fifth grade. And what happened was, that means I caught the same group of students again that I taught in third grade. And at that time, that probably doesn't happen much anymore, but at that time, she would accept, parent requests and things of that nature. And being that they already knew me from third grade, it was an overwhelming sense of belonging. Like, I felt, wow, all of these kids, all these parents wanted their kids to be in my class. And it was overwhelmingly positive. And I will never forget that experience at that particular school. And my boss knew, and she told me several times, well, she said, I always save you for last when it comes to placement, because I know I can put you in any grade and you'll do a great job in whatever grade you're in.
Which is that's an amazing feeling to have that kind of support, that level of appreciation. I know I've had that conversation with parents, the kids that I've taught were like, can you just teach our kid until they graduate high school? No, your kid's going to need other people besides me. That's just how it works. But it is really fun to get to teach the same group of kids for a second year, because there's one, you get to see so much more from them and all the things that they grow into, but also you kind of hit the ground running, right? They know who you are. They have an understanding of what your expectations, the culture of your classroom is going to be like. They understand your personality. So I think that it must have been such a good experience. So you had this really great experience, and from hearing you talk about it, you've moved to a different school district. It sounds like that you're no longer at that school.
Well, I'm actually in the same district. I'm not at that particular school. I've actually taught at 4 different schools. And so this is my 4th one. It's just in a different you call it learning community.
Okay. So just a shift in where you are in the district. So throughout all these times in your career, it seems like you've had this wonderful network of support, at least as you were getting started. Was there ever any, like a really difficult time that you came across where you thought where you felt like you were struggling, or you felt like things were not going the way you were hoping they would? Because, you came out of school with all the excitement, you got the job you wanted at the school you wanted to be at, you had all this awesome support. Seems like just this fairy tale of awesome stuff happening for your teaching career. Did it ever turn around? Did it ever take a downturn at any point where you felt like it was not going very well?
Well, I'll mention that I worked at one of the particular schools that I worked at. You might say was the exact opposite of having all of the resources, having all of the support. And it was a Title I school, and I'll never forget it, because I could feel the huge desire and want of the kids to learn and to be more and to be better and to really gain all they could. But for whatever reason, resources were few. Resources were lacking. In fact, I came on at that school as a fifth third grade teacher, because there were 4 of them already. And so they split class or took some from every class to make my class. And it was a difficult year, in as much as a lot of that stuff I had to come by on my own. But at the same time, I think I grew a lot that year too, because I began to create a lot. And I think that creative gene kind of has always been there, but maybe it would not have come out had I not been placed in that situation where it was necessary. And so I didn't stay there very long, but that was definitely a situation where it really wasn't, that bed of roses as it was at the very first school that I taught.
So definitely some challenge and some things to overcome. But as you mentioned, one of the things that I picked up pretty early in my career, because I ended up having to do a lot of creating from the beginning, is you learn a lot about what works and what doesn't work and what's effective with kids and what isn't. Most of which in my first year wasn't terribly effective. They seem to think so, but I don't know about that. But that learning to create the things that your kids need and to create almost all of it, because like you said, I worked in the school I worked in when I first started. There were some things I just didn't have them. And so I had to create all this stuff. And so I'm just, as I hear you talking about that point in your career where you start having to make it all for yourself because it's just not there and your kids need it. And you said they're hungry for it. They're desperate for it. And you can feel that is, I think that's a really difficult thing for a lot of teachers to do, but it's also a sign of really, really strong teaching, is that when you can identify what your kids need and then make it
Right.
instead of having to look for it.
Right.
So yeah, overcoming a challenge is a really important part of growing in your teaching career. And so you're at the school you're at now. Things are seemingly going quite well for you, as far as I've heard from, conversations with you. You have a lot of good things going on. And one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on, and sooner rather than later, was because I wanted to get the chance to talk to you and share this story with people before your book, The Why in You, comes out, which is April 2nd, if I'm not mistaken. Available right now for you to order on Kindle, and paperback books be available soon. I want to talk a little bit about your book, and before we get too far into it, can you just kind of give people an idea of what it's about, and where you're where you're coming from with it, and what you're hoping people will take away from
it. So the title, again, as Brian mentioned earlier, is The Why in You, and the why as in the letter Y, but also asking the question why as in WHY. And so it's a collection of what I will call anecdotes at different points in my life, even some going back to the very, very beginning that I mentioned earlier about my first grade teacher. Also, the different obstacles that were necessary along that journey. So it sort of identifies a journey that I had to assume. And that journey was not just limited to me becoming a teacher. It's all those other things that are sort of added in there that on a deeper level helped me to become who I am as a person, my character, my personality, my makeup, why I do what I do. So my hope is that as those stories are told, as certain reflective elements come out in the text, that it affirms everybody who reads it. They feel affirmed in their journey. They feel affirmed in their desire to reach and do, and even in those times of obstacle, and times of trial, and times of when things are not exactly the way that you would like for them to be, understanding that there's a reason for it all. And you can either look at it in the negative light, or you can look at it in the positive light, or you can look at it and say, okay, well, I had to go through that, but maybe there was something in it for me. And so it's a journey, and it's a journey that I'm still on. And I still ask the question of why. But I understand that when I ask that question of why, when I reflect on those moments in my life, that I know I wouldn't be here right now where I am if it wasn't for the why. if it wasn't for those times in my life where I actually had to ask that question. So reflecting on that journey, and hopefully everybody who reads that book will be able to identify the why in them, understand that there's a need for the authentic you. There's an authentic person in you that somebody else is waiting for.
I think that's great. Really pushing people to think about why they're, why they are where they are, why they've gotten to the point where they've at. And that's something that, we have talked about because our books have some similar themes that cross over. And that journey of discovery, and also the way in which you overcome obstacles. And I think the way you framed the obstacle that you had discussed with us earlier is in such a positive light. So yeah, you had to make a lot of the things yourself, and you lost a lot of that that support that you had, but it made you better. It gave you, and while it was trying, it also was a challenge that you grew from, and that you became stronger in. And so what a great message to be sharing with everybody. And I know that you're really passionate about that message. You're really excited to share it with everybody. And I couldn't be more excited for you, because it's so important for all of us to think about that, and think about, why are we where we are? Why are we who we are? And I like that you mentioned it's more than just your teaching career. It's you as a person. It's who you are, because that means a lot more. And I don't like the idea that we try to separate ourselves from our work, or separate our family, or our, our thing, our hobby, or our other stuff. You're a person. You're not a conglomerate of little segmented sections that you can pull apart. And so I really like that about how this all affects you personally, on the whole. So can you tell me a little bit about where this came from? So what prompted you to take all those things that were swirling around in you that have made you who you are, and to put them together and share them with everybody?
Well, I'll say it was the summer, spring, summer of 2015 that I really started connecting with PLN and Twitter and all of that. And I started to blog. It had come up in conversation, and I hadn't really done it. And I knew that, that writing was definitely something I could get with. And so I started blogging, and I really, through blogging, became a whole lot more reflective than I already was. I always analyze everything. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'm very analytical. So reflecting through blogging was like right down my alley. And so I started just blogging at once, twice, 3 times a month, depending on how often I was able to sit down and do it. And so when I write, I speak from myself. I speak out of my heart. I speak maybe what I feel based on my experiences in and out of the classroom, because like you said, it's the whole me, it's not part of me. And so I had done that for probably about a year, and I thought, well, I wonder, just thinking back on the things that I have written, and even going back and looking at it, I wonder if I might be able to develop something that might be of substance, that might mean something to somebody else, that might be able to help somebody else, based on my own experiences, based on my own understanding, my own ability to rise above obstacles that I might have faced in life. And so it started out as that idea. And I said, okay, well, I've already written certain things, and definitely I think there's a reason, there's a purpose for those things that I've written. And so I looked at them, and I said, kind of asked that question, well, is it possible to build upon what I've already done and make this into something that's meaningful to somebody else. And that's where it started. And I cannot even begin to tell you how, even in the process of writing, there were obstacles. The process of making that decision to pursue a book like this, there were obstacles. But the way in which it just fell together, and I say fell together, but really, I don't think it was a coincidence at all. The nature of my experiences that I was having, and the nature of experiences that I've had, and how I was able to see in those experiences not only how much it may have hurt, but also how much it helped. And so there came the book, and and even the title, it's taking that step back and reflecting. It's asking the question. And every time I step back and ask the question, it makes me reflect. It makes me think about, okay, there must have been purpose in this. Why? And so understanding that motivates me to keep going. And even though I might walk into something negative tomorrow, at least I know that there's something in it, perhaps, that is going to help me.
That's normally I ask people what they would recommend or what kind of advice they would give, but I don't know if we can get much better than that. I mean, that be reflective and recognize that in those difficult situations, there's opportunities as well. And I think I echo your piece about writing and obstacles, and dealing with some of those obstacles is immense, and also so rewarding, at least for me, being reflecting in a lot of similar ways to yourself. And so, yeah, I think that's such a good message, though, that you really need to step back and be reflective, and in that moment, while you're reflecting, recognize that there are both good and bad things about whatever might have happened, and that you can take something from any of it if you want to, if you can choose that, and it's how you choose to proceed going forward that matters. What a strong message, I think, to send to teachers across the spectrum, because I do see a lot of teachers who are struggling with the grind, that are struggling with the everyday aspect, the constant bombardment from outside forces, or just the difficulty of the job, year after year, day after day, and to have that ability to step back and reflect and understand that these are all just moments, and each moment gives you an opportunity to either gain from it or turn back and walk away.
Yeah. And certainly not to diminish the experience, because there are certain things we go through in life that are really, really challenging. And so I get that, and I'm not this person that doesn't see that, oh my goodness, like that was a really big obstacle. That was a really big stumbling block. Sometimes you have to call it what it is. You have to see it as what it is. But I've come to believe that there is good in every bad situation, if only we could see it. And sometimes in our view of the obstacle, it's hard to see that. And so I'm thankful, I'm grateful even for people that will help me see what I can't see, even in those times when I can't see it for myself.
Yeah, that's important too, the people that help you see it as well. And I think that's one of the great things about writing and about sharing your writing, is that your voice might connect with somebody who needs you in that moment. And the fact that you're so willing to share those stories and those reflections in an honest and open way is really powerful for people. So I can't say it enough times, but the book, The Why in You, will be available on April 4th, April 2nd, excuse me. I'm thinking 4 because the April's 4th month, April 2nd. And it's going to be a great read. just from all the things we've talked about. I can't wait to get my hands on a copy. I'm looking forward to getting the paperback copy and then having you sign it for me someday.
You got it.
In the meantime, you can check out everything Dene's offering right now at denegainey.com. His website is all inclusive, so it's got information about his book, it's got his blog, it's got hashtags that you can follow, including chances to hear him sing, which you will not regret. Dene's Periscope channel is full of wonderful sounds of him giving out, just sharing his voice, literally sharing his voice with us. I don't know if it's too late at night for you to share your voice with us. I'm not going to force you. But if you really want to hear Dene sing, which you should because it's fantastic, that's also something you can check out at denegainey.com. Just lots of good resources he shares with everybody. And if you sign up, you'll even get some of those projects and cool things he's doing with kids. So,
well, I wondered, and I was thinking, is Brian going to bring that up? And so I was actually prepared. I said, just in case Brian mentions anything about me singing, I kind of prepared myself. And I said, I'll sing a little bit of a song that I wrote. And I actually wrote it for my students. And this was probably a few years ago, but it's called I Believe I Can. And so I'll just sing the chorus. And I hope I can get it all out, but I think I should be able to. So, I believe I can reach the highest mountain. I believe I can do anything. When I set my goals, I work hard to achieve. 'Cause I believe I can.
I was not kidding. You definitely need to hear more of Dene singing. And the fact that we got the exclusive self-written for your students, which is even better, rendition here on the podcast tonight, really does make it a special edition that is so worth hanging on till the end to hear the last part, because so good. Dene, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing all this with us. So much great stuff that you have to offer everybody, and I'm looking forward to that the April 2nd when your book comes out and people get a chance to read all those reflections and stories firsthand. So yeah,
I'm grateful, Brian. Thank you again for having me on your podcast. It really means a lot. And if I could say just one last thing, I hope that when you get that book on April 2nd, anybody who picks it up, that it's a book that you pick up often. That's my hope, that it calls you to reflection constantly. And so you go back and you get it every now and again, and it's one of those kinds of books.
I'm sure it will be. Like I said, can't wait to get my hands on it. Can't wait to pick it up for the first time, for the second time, for the fifth time. And yeah, what a great opportunity to share your voice on paper, at least, with all of us out there. So thanks so much, Dene. Can't wait, and we really appreciate you sharing your journey with us tonight.
Absolutely.
So that was a great opportunity for me to talk to the one and only Dene Gainey. Got to hear him sing, got to hear him share his story, and talk a whole bunch about his upcoming book, a really exciting project called The Why in You. I can't tell you how much I am looking forward to having the opportunity to pick up Dene's book and dig into it and really get to enjoy all that it has to offer. So I really appreciate Dene coming on this special edition of the Teacher's Journey podcast, and we'll catch you on the next journey.